I think we are live, and welcome to this sort of In Conversation series. This is a regular online session that we do as part of our community, where we speak to different people in Sova. And today I'm really chuffed to be joined by my colleague Jarret Hardie, who's our CTO. By way of introduction, my name's Rahmatallah. I'm Director of Marketing at Sova. And thank you again for joining us today. So, Jarret, do you want to maybe just introduce yourself, a bit about your role at Sova?
Great, thank you. Yes, I'm really pleased to be here for our discussion today. I am Jarret. I head up the technology team at Sova, working with a really talented group of software developers and product specialists, as well as our psychology team on our platform. And really delighted to talk about it today.
Thank you. And just for those who are maybe less familiar with Sova, a very brief introduction. We are essentially a team of occupational psychologists, and we're on a mission to change assessment for good. And we're in the business of talent assessment, helping organisations make better, more informed, data-driven decisions about their talent. So our roots are very much in science, the science of occupational psychology, but we really believe that technology has an important role in how we design and deliver our assessments. And we have built a platform, a unified assessment platform, rather than a series of discrete products, that allows us to work with clients really flexibly and configure solutions, whether that may be a solution for a volume recruitment role, through to graduate, through to a senior leader in an organisation. And the paths, those experiences for each of those job families may look different, and the platform is built with a lot of flexibility in mind. And so the work that Jarret and his team do is so important in terms of that experience, in terms of our mission on changing assessment for good, because that's about candidate experience. It's about delivering fair outcomes for our clients and candidates. So diversity is an absolute anchor point for Sova. And making sure that we have a joined up, integrated, really good experience for assessment, rather than actually, I think historically, disjointed, fragmented. Feels a bit of a hurdle race actually for candidates coming through a hiring process particularly. So we talk about digital assessment a lot. Jarret, in your opinion, from your perspective, what do you mean by digital assessment?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It can mean quite a lot of things to a number of people. I mean, obviously, it means that the assessment is online for the most part. For me, though, digital assessment is really about unlocking kind of three different things across your recruitment and talent development. So the first and foremost, I think you alluded to it already, Claire, is the unified data in particular. So when you've got all of your data in one spot, that's going to give you an enormous advantage when it comes to analyzing the performance of your programs, analyzing your diversity and fairness, measuring your outcomes really across the entire organization. It's difficult to do when you've got things in systems all over the place. So putting things together in one spot, for me, is really only possible when you digitalize your assessment experience. The second, I think, really kind of key benefit is flexibility. When things are digitalized, you can do a lot more quickly when your organization evolves, when your processes evolve, or even as your skill requirements evolve. So it's the best way really to keep on top of that in real time almost. Mm-hmm. And last but not least is the candidate experience. There is a lot to be said, I think, for making the assessment experience engaging and fun. A digital assessment platform is going to be your candidate's first experience with the organization, and I think therefore it's vital that they come away feeling like they have gotten something from it, that the process was fair and possibly even slightly enjoyable.
And that's in contrast, isn't it? If you think about historically with assessment, and actually if you think about a hiring process, I read some research where it was anywhere between sort of 5 and 10 different systems and vendors that might be involved in a single hiring process, which those kind of point solutions that solve a challenge at a particular point in a talent process. But actually, when you put yourself in the shoes of the candidate, what does that mean? That either means a lack of feedback or multiple logins at different stages of the recruitment process. And so it will feel like the hurdle race, I think we often refer to it. So from Sova's perspective, what we want to do is make that assessment process as kind of seamless and frictionless as possible, single login.
Yeah, I think so. And candidates will really notice the difference. If there is that seamless journey for them, they'll come away feeling that there is somebody behind this process that really cares about them and their experience.
And that's interesting as well, isn't it? Because often it's something that's technology enabled, where you're trying to automate processes and bring efficiencies to a process. How do we still keep it human? How do we still make sure that someone doesn't feel like they're completely arm's length, that nobody, there's kind of a machine has kind of made a decision. I think we'll probably come on to talk about that a little when we talk about some of the emerging technology that's really influencing our market around kind of like AI. But it just sort of taking it a step further then. So if we put ourselves in the shoes of an organization that's wanting to sort of digitally transform a talent process, and that, whether that is recruitment or for internal development or internal talent, what are those sort of key considerations that they need to be bearing in mind?
Yeah, it really, for me, it just starts with the outcomes, getting clarity on what you're trying to kind of achieve. Organizations that have, like you were saying, a number of different tools and systems and processes, some of which will be online, some of which will be offline, are going to find managing the transition to a digital environment is something that will bring benefit, but obviously is going to present all sorts of opportunities and possibly lead you down the garden path and things that you might want to do later. I think scrutinizing the existing process is probably the most important thing an organization can do, because you don't necessarily want to end up with a carbon copy online of your current process. This is an opportunity for improvement. It's an opportunity for efficiency, but it's also an opportunity to look at how you're going to end up with that unified look of your assessment data and what you'll be able to do with it in the future. So I think really crafting that process will pay the biggest dividends. Yeah. And I also think focusing on candidate experience without question. Moving to a fully digital process is a tremendous opportunity to make everything much better for candidates. And so I think using this as an opportunity for that is really key.
Do you think, obviously, if I think about the last 12, 18 months, some of the conversations that we've had with clients at Sova, COVID has kind of been a catalyst for some of that digital transformation or that thinking. From your perspective, have you seen that in the conversations that you're having with our clients? Like what's underpinning that sort of digital transformation?
It's a really good question. There's been a huge drive towards moving things online and the efficiency of the process. 2 years ago, we were not as often talking about a fully remote digital assessment center, for example, and that is the number one conversation topic that I've been having with clients over the last year. How can we do basically everything that used to be offline? How can we do it online, and make the process even better potentially? Now that obviously we're coming kind of hopefully out of COVID, and we're looking at maybe meeting in person again someday. I think clients and organizations are really beginning to understand that they can keep some of those processes that they've developed. That what organizations should come up with is actually really good, and isn't just sort of a second-class substitute for the way we used to do things.
Yeah, definitely seeing that sort of almost like that confidence to transform at pace increase in our clients. So I could completely agree with that, and I think there's something about process resilience in there as well, isn't there? Like actually, like you just said, hopefully we're coming out of the pandemic. Interesting. I was just looking at some of the news today. You see the cases rise, but actually, I think it's in order. I think what it exposed a couple of years ago was that vulnerability and that risk that organisations weren't able to pivot really quickly as and when they needed, and so therefore, as we emerge at this time, having that agility and resilience in your processes, your people, to kind of go, well, actually, maybe there's a hybrid approach there. Are we going to return to in person? So there's lots, I think, of interesting conversations going on along around organisations reflecting on what the future looks like, and it isn't necessarily a return.
That's right. I've seen tremendous innovation from our clients over the last 12, 14 months. It's been pretty inspiring, actually. And what you just said, I think, is really the heart of it. They've come to a much more resilient process now. And using our platform has helped them do that, obviously, but even more importantly, sort of just seeing how they have been able to take best practice and put it fully online throughout this time is inspiring. Yeah,
I agree. One of the topics that I read a lot about, I think it's really, really interesting, and I think we as an organisation are thinking about, well, how do we use emerging technology to best effect? Interestingly, and we'll put it in the notes of the event. There's an excellent podcast called "In Machines We Trust," and they've just released a 4-part series on the use of AI in recruitment. So anything from resume screening, sentiment analysis, video interviews, assessments, etc. And actually, so I was thinking about it from a bias, and one of the findings, interestingly, was something about the perpetuation of the name Jarret in software engineering. That it was one of the most common names. So here we are, Jarret. Anyway, but I guess the point was real critique and exploration about should we. If so, how do we, and what are the principles that kind of guide how we might use some machine learning in our platform, but that's not at the expense of quality of outcomes, candidate experience, etc. But what do you see the role of AI playing in assessment today and going forward?
There's no question there's a role for AI in assessment. I think to leave it out would be missing a number of opportunities, some really important opportunities, particularly when it comes to removing bias and also improving kind of efficiency and fairness. In our industry, I think a lot of the efforts to include AI to date have probably taken the wrong approach. I mean, they've come at it from a different angle, not really a science-based angle, more of an engineering angle. So we've seen, I think, a lot of tools come in trying to do things that AI is not necessarily good at, or that AI hasn't been trained to do yet. For example, video analysis is one of the areas where there's been some very problematic use of AI. We've also certainly seen some very high-profile cases in CV screening and whatnot, where AI has not been well trained. I think there is an opportunity, though, and we've been taking a lot of time to kind of research this here at Sova, to use AI as a supporting mechanism. So not to replace any of sort of the human processes, or not to replace the best practice that people in the organizations that we deal with are custodians of, not to get rid of any of that, but actually to support it, to identify cases where you might be falling behind in that best practice, to help remove bias in the evaluation of kind of assessments and their responses, and particularly with all the unified data, to monitor at scale your D&I statistics and kind of quickly flag up when something might not be meeting the standard and identify potentially why.
And that's in contrast to, and again, I'd draw people's attention, there's a good episode in the podcast, that the difference between facial analysis, like if someone's doing a video interview, and sentiment analysis and inferring some kind of predictive measure of personality, job, culture fit. which is not an area I think we've decided that there just isn't the science to back it
No.
up. But actually, if it means at the back end, whether that's how you transcribe and analyze what people say,
That's right.
and how might you do that in a way that augments with the kind of hiring manager and those decisions. It's a huge topic, isn't it? And I think even in society more generally, and there's sort of lack of legislation on that topic as it relates to talent. Certainly, I think we are working with organisations, and that's under, again, the span of changing assessment for good, is to sort of co-create some new standards, being transparent, really thinking carefully and being data-driven about how we're using AI. So that will be our kind of like guiding principles as we go forward with our roadmap.
Right. AI is very, very good at analyzing substance and not really well trained at analyzing style. So you're right, that's the reason we have focused very much on what people have said rather than how they've said it, or some of the more ephemeral characteristics around a video interview response or an assessment response.
Yeah. Okay, that's really helpful. Before we get on to share a little bit more about our roadmap, for those listening today, obviously we're hosting this event from our community platform, and that really is a place, an online community for people involved in assessment, whether that's kind of recruitment or talent development, to be able to engage, to access resources, and also some training courses that we're putting out there. And again, that's with the view to sort of trying to raise the bar of practice. And one of those is a course that's all around digital assessment for the future. And coming back to where we started, Jarret, I kind of think, what do you think the future of sort of digital assessment looks like from your perspective?
Well, certainly there will be some AI involved, as we were just talking about, but I think it's much more than that. I think it's about taking the assessment and talent development processes up to the next level. So really making it easy for organizations to implement best practice across the entire organization, removing kind of those point solutions so that you get a joined up view of all of your data. And it's with that kind of holistic view that you can focus on fairness and diversity. And so I think that's really where the future is going. If you look back at sort of the last 20 years of assessment or beyond, we've moved from paper-based processes to some online processes. And now I think we have kind of the opportunity to consolidate that movement into not just putting assessments online, but making it really easy for anybody involved in recruitment or talent development to quickly put together a fair, defensible, comprehensive process without having to sort of worry about a lot of the hard graft that used to go into that.
Yeah, the admin, the logistics, the headache that goes alongside. Yeah, absolutely. This seems like a really good point, Jarret, to sort of segue into what's coming down, well, kind of where we are on roadmap and what our own innovation path looks like. Are you going to just share your screen?
If I can figure out how to do that, yes, I will. Let's start. Yeah, there we go.
That's a good job that the CTO has worked out how to show his screen.
That's right. So hopefully everybody can see this.
Yeah, let's go back. Yeah.
Our roadmap over the next sort of couple of years is really focused on three main areas. One is the analytics and insight. So obviously you've heard me talk an awful lot about holistic view of data. We want to bring forth the tools to take advantage of that and really allow our clients to drive some meaningful insights. We're also moving a lot of the tools that we use to build assessment contents, to interviews and reports into the platform itself, so that knowledgeable recruitment professionals will be able to sort of take advantage of that. including some tools that will allow hiring managers to build interviews in a way that is consistent with the organization's policies and best practices. And last but not least, we're putting a lot of effort into that candidate experience and, in fact, into the assessor experience as well. Part of that is moving to fully digital experiences away from in-person, but overall, I think it's just sort of a way for us to allow people to get more out of the tools that we've built.
And those pillars, aren't they, Jarret? Of all of our development around whether that's the whole, like you said, the benefit of having the analytics and insights, and not just from your assessment, but from other data points in that process, pulled together so we can really understand what's working, what's not. It's just sort of your talent profile in a way that's much more unified than we've ever been able to do before. And I think one of my observations and what I think is really exciting is being able to equip our clients with more tools and control over their solution where it makes sense. And I would just add that the community and what we're trying to do on community in terms of adding resources and how we equip hiring managers to do really good interviews in the first place. We're working on a whole sort of pipeline of content that will be freely available as part of our community, just to make sure that the kind of practitioners and the expertise, we can help our clients and their teams in their organizations. But I interrupted you, sorry. It was just...
No, I think that's actually a really good point. It's one of the things that I'm so pleased about with our community. We can provide the tools, but that's only half the journey. The other half is how people are supported and motivated to use them to their full advantage. And I think that's really one of the strengths of the community that we're building.
Fantastic.
So one of the, as I said, just sort of a quick overview of some of the products and what they look like. Like I said, one of the key focuses for us is the analytics and insight. Here is just sort of an example of what our dashboarding looks like. You can see there's a lot of configuration here as you can get a view on your data in a number of different ways, whether it's by a certain time period, within a certain activity, or just kind of across the board. For any of our existing clients, this is available in a beta format at the moment, and would be more than happy to sort of work with you on understanding how it fits within your use of our platform. As we were mentioning, there is a lot of new functionality coming out over the next 3 months to put more control into hands of our clients and the specialists within their organizations, as well as hiring managers. And last but not least, some new content available. So we've got obviously the gamified assessment there on the left, and some really robust assessor experiences kind of pictured there on the right. The assessor experience in particular is drawing on our learnings over the last year, as everybody around the world has moved their assessment centers online, and whether it stays online or continues to be in person. I think we've got a really efficient and well-designed product now available for assessment centers and for online interviews.
And I think what's been interesting, certainly some of the clients I've spoken to who perhaps were a bit fearful, or what does that online experience mean? Is it the same? Is it as rich from a candidate experience? What are you able to observe candidates in the same way? And actually, I think there's been a real opening up of whether that's from a social mobility perspective, actually a widening of talent pool who perhaps may not have chosen to attend an assessment centre with travel, kind of like etiquette in terms of on the day, but also some really positive feedback from assessors that actually that more discreet, if you like, observance in terms of the information that they can glean from what they're recording and scoring, being able to do that directly into the system. Again, it's been that sort of catalyst to maybe take that next step. So I think there's been some maybe unexpected outcomes that have come, certainly even from a green agenda, from a cost efficiency, quality of candidate, talent pool, broadening that talent pool, assessor experience. So I guess more likely we might return to a sort of a hybrid model, but I think it's been a really good experiment, I guess, for organisations to get their head around, particularly in that area of assessment centres.
Yeah, I agree. Feedback from our clients has been overwhelmingly that candidates felt the assessment centre experience online was a good one, which I think probably surprised a number of people. I think the extent to which candidates rated the experience, highly surprised me, and it was nice to see.
Good. So I think that kind of comes towards the end of our session. I'm mindful of time, but I guess if we were to summarise, it's really for us at Sova that intersection between science and technology working together with purpose, doing it mindfully, to get the right outcomes for an organisation, but also to really think and put candidate front and centre of everything we do. I don't know if there's any questions from anyone today, but just to say in close that the recording of today's session will be available on our community platform. We will put some maybe signposts, certainly to the podcast I mentioned. If anyone wants to see any of those things that Jarret was talking around the kind of particularly around analytics and the insights, the dashboarding is really super powerful. Feel free to get in touch. We can certainly arrange for one of our team to get in touch and walk you through that. But for now, Jarret, thank you. I know you've got a really busy day ahead of you. That's always the case, but we're really grateful for the time, because I think it's a really useful insight into the work that your team are doing, but also how that kind of augments what we're doing in the rest of the business for our kind of innovation part of the roadmap. So thank you.
Thank you. It was really lovely to speak today.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.